What up, Leaguers? Welcome to the Spectacular Spoiler League. I'm the Pandan Superman, the mayor of Hype City, HazyRome, and as always, I'm joined by the God of Night, the Prime Minister of Post-Production, DeepBoyce. And today we are here to rank the top 10 Star Wars lightsaber fights ever, okay? We're talking about the Star Wars movies. We're talking about Star Wars, the Clone Wars series. We're talking about Star Wars Rebels. Yes, we're throwing in those animated series, ZZZs, because the fights in those were awesome. So they all had an opportunity to make the list. That being said, the DeepBoyce, lay it down for the people out there. For the Leaguers out there.
Yeah, we just had the very bright idea because we're big Star Wars fans here, and we thought, hey, what are the best fights we've seen in Star Wars canon? Like Hazy said, the movies, the shows, everything that's canon. None of the extended universe stuff, so I'm sorry anybody that comes in here yelling in the comment section, but we're going to leave that out. We're only leaving stuff that is canonical, as in it happened and is confirmed by the savior of Star Wars, George Lucas himself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Disney at large, and not the new owners of the Star Wars logo and franchise and all that other good stuff. But anyway, man, we're basing this list on three factors essentially. So the effect of the overall plot on the Star Wars lore, right? The choreography of the fight, of course, and the legacy of the characters involved in said fight. So that being said, anytime a lightsaber has been unleashed in a fight, it's eligible for this top 10 list. But DeepBoyce, start us off with number 10.
Number 10 on the list is your boy Darth Maul versus Vizsla. This is from Season 5 of Star Wars The Clone Wars CGI cartoon, Episode 15, called Shades of Reason.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you don't know who Vizsla is, he is, I'd say, somewhat of a minor character. But he is important in, I guess, the lore of Star Wars, the lore of, I guess, the Mandalorians, which was being built up during this Clone Wars cartoon.
Yeah. He's the leader of a terrorist organization by the name of Death Watch, or was the leader until this fight.
Yes.
But anyway,
so this,
I'll leave that to
you. Again, to kind of set up the scenario real quick, Mandalore is home of the Mandalorians, a race of, they grew up as a warrior race, and Vizsla was able to take over. Regardless, Darth Maul was also, he happened to be alive, and he was doing some things behind the scenes, and one of those things is to conquer Mandalore itself, and he had a bit of a dope fight with Vizsla in that 15th episode of the 5th season, Shades of Reason, and it's on this list. Obviously, it's number 10 because it's probably the least, I guess, impactful, you could say. It was very well choreographed, especially given that Vizsla is a Mandalore, and in their lore, they have the Boba Fett armor. That's like a thing of theirs. That's, I guess in some sense, Boba Fett is also Mandalorian. I've heard some people say he isn't, or he's not. Regardless, he's of
Mandalorian descent.
He's a Mandalorian descent, yeah. And,
right.
He has the jetpack, and he has all the arm cannons and all the gadgets and everything. And this fight was dope because you had Vizsla going toe-to-toe against Darth Maul, who obviously is a Sith with some lightsaber. You'd probably expect him doing some hand-to-hand combat. But Vizsla was mixing in hand-to-hand combat with the Darksaber, which is a cool addition to the Star Wars lore, as well as flying about in his jetpack, deploying little bombs, using little gadgets, and as we all know, spoilers if you haven't seen the show, but it's been around for a long time, Vizsla gets owned by Darth Maul. Darth Maul becomes victorious and becomes the ruler of Mandalore for just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and we see we're gonna talk about what happened after this fight in another entry on this list. But yeah, I mean, it was an awesome fight, and Darth Maul kind of certified his comeback with that fight because that was him kind of asserting his dominance on the Mandalorian people along with his brother Savage Opress. But on to number 9, we've got Obi-Wan and Ventress versus Darth Maul and Savage Opress, courtesy of Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 4, Episode 22, entitled Revenge. Aptly named because Darth Maul and Savage Opress, two brothers, right? They're from the planet of Dathomir, decide to take their vengeance on Obi-Wan. Now, Ventress, she was the former master of Savage Opress. She was trying to apprentice Savage Opress to eventually assassinate Count Dooku, who was her former master as well. So this all boils down to a situation where Obi-Wan and Ventress, two people that were on opposite sides of, the Force spectrum, if you will, one on the light, one on the dark, have to team up to basically fight this dynamic brotherly duo. And I mean, in this fight, we get to see Obi-Wan wielding a red blade, which is something we haven't seen ever, I don't think, in Star Wars canon. And to be honest, Darth Maul and Savage Opress had the both of them up against the wall to the point where they actually had to flee. And it was just a great fight, encapsulating the comeback of Darth Maul and his return to, supremacy, or his return to dominance, so to speak. But yeah, man, that was an awesome fight. And Obi-Wan with a red lightsaber. I mean, you're never going to see that ever again, but that was pretty
It was dope. It was dope close quarters combat fight, and it was well choreographed. Obviously, they were I think they were on a ship as they were fighting.
Yeah, they were on a ship.
So it added a pretty cool dynamic where the Maul brothers were kind of closing in on Obi-Wan and Ventress. And like you said, two enemies had to kind of work together temporarily to fight them off.
Exactly. But DeepBoyce, on to number 8.
Number 8 is from Star Wars Rogue One, a Star Wars story. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I need to have proper naming conventions here. And that is, it's not really a fight, as it is more of a massacre. And
definitely a massacre. I agree.
And it's basically Darth Vader's cameo appearance where he decimates, I'd say, 10 plus rebels towards the end of Rogue One, where they really, it's an iconic scene. It's really cool. Or, it's going to be iconic, we would like to say. And Hazy and I both agree that it's a very cool scene where they make Darth Vader almost look as if he were a slasher flick villain, as if he's like a Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, where he just kind of, he's coming in from the darkness. You see just the glowing of the blade, and he comes in just chopping people up left and right, just force pressing people up, shooting back lasers. It was dope. It was dope. We wish we would get more of this kind of stuff out of one of the most iconic Star Wars characters.
Absolutely. I mean, 2 words I gotta say is "das Beste." I mean, that's the best on-screen appearance of Darth Vader of all time in terms of just sheer villainy and combat prowess. We've never seen Darth Vader wield a lightsaber like that, and it looked crazy. I marked out in the theater when I saw it, and it had to make this list, even though I think it's the only entry on this list that is not a lightsaber versus lightsaber fight. But just the fact that he unleashed the lightsaber, he came out of the darkness, beautiful imagery there, and just awesome sequence of him, stomping out some rebels, basically, which is also not a thing we got to see in the original trilogy. Yeah. Never got to see him straight up stomp out rebels with his own 2 hands.
And we all know, every once in a while, some rebels got to get stomped out.
I mean, Darth Vader has to put his foot down, man, when he feels like people are stepping out of line, man. They were in the way, and they were in the way of the wrong person, man. But on to number 7, we've got Mace Windu versus Palpatine, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I mean, I'm gonna put it this way, okay? It doesn't matter that Anakin, showed up at the fight, chopped off Mace Windu's arms. He said, flew out a damn window, courtesy of Palpatine's electricity. The only thing that matters is that one-on-one with the Great One, Palpatine, Mace Windu won. He won that fight. I mean, he came in with 4 Jedi. They got murked. Rest in peace to one of those Jedi. Kit Fisto, he came up in there, he got murked. But one-on-one in Mace Windu versus Palpatine. I mean, Mace Windu, he used what's called the 7th form of lightsaber combat, Vapad, and he beat Palpatine. Palpatine lost his lightsaber, and for all intents and purposes, if Anakin had not shown up, Mace Windu would have killed him. And he won that fight, and it was an awesome fight, once again in close quarters, and, you also got to see, the suppressed villainy of Palpatine, and I think that was really cool, really definitive. And also, let's be honest, Mace Windu did get owned by machinations that Palpatine had established from years before, which was to turn Anakin to his side. So, I mean, just the overall, and Mace Windu also one of the strongest Jedi, in the Jedi Order. I mean, just to see him get his due in that fight scene. And let's be honest, Yoda went one-on-one with Palpatine too and didn't fare so well in that fight either. But I mean, I would say that Mace Windu sort of had a better showing. I mean, you could argue that Yoda survived, but Mace Windu disarmed him and had him on his back, begging for mercy.
Yeah, I mean, let's call it how it is.
That's dope.
If it weren't for Anakin's trifling ass, then things would have been totally different. And you're right.
Yeah.
Mace Windu was able to beat Palpatine. And Palpatine's no joke, as we'll probably get into later on in this list.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, it's bittersweet because we would have loved to see more action coming from Mace Windu himself in the Star Wars series. One of the most powerful Jedi. And, you know, we get to see him triumphantly for a little bit and then gets thrown out a window, unfortunately. But the little bit that we saw made us want to see a lot more because it was pretty dope.
Absolutely. DeepBoyce, hit us with numero 6.
Number 6 is Ahsoka Tano versus Darth Vader. That's Star Wars Rebels Season 2, Episode 22, Twilight of the Apprentice, Part 2. A lot of twos in there. Those of you that don't know, Ahsoka Tano is Anakin Skywalker's apprentice from the Clone Wars, and she continues to make an appearance in Star Wars Rebels. Obviously a bit older, so there's a lot of emotional baggage there. The apprentice, formerly of Anakin, coming back with vengeance on her mind to try and fight back her former master, who's also turned into a Sith Lord, Darth Vader. And the stakes are super high during this season. This is the last episode of Season 2, where you have a lot going on with the Rebels and their Jedi, as well as, I guess, Sith Inquisitors, or the Grand Inquisitors. I'm not sure how you would officially call them.
I would just call them Inquisitors.
Yeah, and you know, they're having what was quite possibly an epic fight. Culminating in Ahsoka versus Vader in an ending where, you know, it's disputed as to what happened. Obviously, Vader survived, but it seems like Ahsoka's also alive. I mean, the creator of the show seems to heavily imply that she's still alive. So for her to go toe-to-toe against Darth Vader, of all people, and to survive.
Yeah. And she did damage to him, too, because she straight up cut up a piece of his mask to the point where we get to see that one glowing eye of, you know, this turned Anakin, this corrupt, this dark side poisoned Anakin Skywalker. And, you know, another dope effect they had in that fight was you got to hear Matt Lanter, who voiced Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars, and like the James Earl Jones voice of Darth Vader combined together to kind of have this like proto Anakin Vader voice speaking at the same time. It was just a dope tribute to the overall history of the character. And, you know, Ahsoka Tano, you know, this has been a long time coming, because we knew with Anakin having a Padawan, either that Padawan had to die at some point, you know, having not shown up in Revenge of the Sith, or, you know, the chance that they could be going head to head against each other might have actually occurred. And the fact that we got to see even some of that was fantastic. We may even get to see a rematch. Who knows? But it's an awesome fight. But into the top 5, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Top 5 Star Wars lightsaber fights. At number 5, we've got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I mean, this is the moment where Obi-Wan becomes Obi-Wan. You know what I'm saying? This is the moment where we get to see the maturation of his Jedi skills for the first time. We all knew that Obi-Wan was a wise and great Jedi master, you know, courtesy of the original trilogy. But this is the first time where we get to see him, you know, take someone down. And by all accounts, you know, him being a Padawan at that point, he had no business taking on a Sith Lord. Mm-hmm. And after the death of Qui-Gon at Darth Maul's hands, you know, Obi-Wan was able to step up, and, you know, at that point we thought he killed Darth Maul. We found out he wasn't necessarily dead, but he still chopped him in half and beat him. And this action, you know, Master Mundi, you know, on the Jedi Council, he actually went on to say that a Sith Lord hasn't been seen in almost 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And Obi-Wan was able to defeat that Sith Lord as a Padawan. And that led to him becoming a Jedi Knight and eventually taking Anakin Skywalker as his Padawan. So, I mean, that is so important to the legacy of Obi-Wan, the history between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. It paved the way for all of that. Yeah. And, you know, it's just interesting to see that Darth Sidious's plans, you know, in a sense, it started at that point, at that moment. Despite, him seemingly suffering a loss, or his side of things seemingly suffering a defeat, he still, managed to get what he wanted in the end.
Yeah, needless to say, like, Obi-Wan stepped up. This is the origin story of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And up until this point, this is the best Jedi, or one of the best choreographed Jedi fights we've probably ever seen. That's one of
I would say when that movie came out, it was the best of all time.
Yes.
You could argue that choreography-wise, it was the best fight of all time.
And
I could
say in 1999 when this movie came out, your boy DeepBoyce was a tender 9 years of age, and I was just blown away about what I was seeing. Obviously, in retrospect, the movie isn't as good, but, Obi-Wan, classic character. Qui-Gon is a cool character, and Darth Maul, I mean, he's a cool character too. And that was the first time we saw any character with a double-bladed lightsaber. That was really cool. Yeah. The way the fight kind of progressed. Yeah. It really brought it from all ends. And like Hazy said, it had rippling effects till probably even the current trilogy right now. We don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you bring up the double-bladed lightsaber. I mean, that kind of introduced a history of just, lightsaber changes on screen. I mean, obviously, the EU had, painted some pictures, I'm sure, of different color lightsabers and things like that. But, I mean, the cross-guard lightsaber, that's all an evolution of seeing that first double-sided lightsaber blade. And I just think it was really, really awesome, man. But on to number 4, DeepBoyce.
Yes.
What do we got?
Number 4 is another fight from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. This is from Season 5, Episode 16, The Lawless. It is Palpatine, yes, the Palpatine, versus Darth Maul and his apprentice, Savage Opress.
Yes.
Now, this fight, there's really no other way to put it, is absolutely dope. The way they animated it, the way they had Palpatine say, I need to take a second right now and handle this business. I need to clap back at these fools right now because I have all these plans working, and Darth Maul is doing me no favors right now. I have a new apprentice in the making. I can't have this little whatever's going on over here. And he went toe to toe against two pretty deadly Sith, combatants, and easily sway. I mean, Palpatine, whenever he's doing anything, he's laughing. And the whole time, he was cracking up how much he was whooping that ass. And it ended in Savage Opress getting the blade through the chest. And that was it. That was the end of it.
Yeah, Palpatine was straight up deadly in that fight. And he was honestly playing with them the whole time, toying with them. And at the end of that fight, this is, mind you, this is a point where Maul has, asserted his comeback. He feels like he's emboldened by the fact that he's conquered Mandalore. He
was on the up and up.
He was on the up and up. And by the end of that fight, he was on the ground begging, saying, "Master, please." Yeah. Like that's real talk, some gangster stuff right there, bro. That is some gangster stuff.
Absolutely.
Right there.
And honestly, this also, what was unique about this fight was that it was Sith versus Sith, which is something you hardly ever see. You probably saw it in the Clone Wars. We saw, I guess, like Asajj versus Dooku. And I think that was about it. Maybe Dooku versus that was it. You don't really see too many Sith
pretty
fights.
Much.
So for these heavy hitters to kind of go toe to toe and former apprentice to go up against the master, unprecedented at the time, and it really delivered. Especially seeing a character who oftentimes you hear rumblings of being extremely deadly and powerful. Palpatine actually go out there and make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, this is also the first time we got to see Palpatine with double blades, man. 2 blades in his hands. Yes. He had 2 lightsabers whooping that ass, man. Whooping that Sith ass. Yep. And, the whole notion of, having, there can only be 2 Sith. I mean, Darth Maul was saying, yeah, that's true. But maybe me and my apprentice, Savage Opress, maybe we're the 2 Sith that need to be. But by the end of that fight, he was like, yo, look, Master, look what I've done. I've conquered Mandalore for you. And Palpatine was like, yo, that would be dope. Except for the fact that I already got an apprentice and you're a bum ass. But I still got uses for you. And he ends up taking him prisoner. So, I mean, it is just an awesome... I mean, Palpatine goes there alone. He does this completely solo dolo. He's flipping around, whipping ass. I mean, once again, one of the best choreographed fights, I think, of all time.
I mean, those dudes that he has at his side, who are the red curtains, didn't have him around. He said, I don't need you guys.
Red Guards, man, they he didn't need them. He went and did this himself. And, we don't see Palpatine wield lightsabers that often. So, it was just a beautiful, beautiful fight. But on to number 3, everybody. Okay. We've got Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader, round 2. Star Wars Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. So, this is the fight, for lack of a better way to say it, before Disney started off a new trilogy with Star Wars The Force Awakens. This was the culmination of the Star Wars franchise. Even with the prequels, this was the definitive end of the Star Wars timeline in terms of canon. And this fight had all the weight to go with it. I mean, just to see Luke wielding the green lightsaber, going up against his father, who he reluctantly wanted to, was fighting, and Darth Vader, doing the bidding of Palpatine, all the while Palpatine, the Emperor, is just laughing and egging both of them on to kill each other. I mean, really, he was egging Luke on because he wanted to see Luke embrace the dark side. And, I would dare say that Luke was even channeling the rage of the dark side throughout this fight. And ultimately, he defeated his father. He beat Darth Vader. And you could also argue that Darth Vader was conflicted in terms of his emotions, but Luke Skywalker won. And the results of this fight, echoed through the galaxy, even now in the sequel trilogy with Star Wars, with, the Emperor ultimately trying to kill Luke and Darth Vader saying, no, not my son, not today, and throwing him into a damn reactor. Yes. I mean, the fight was pretty dope, seeing Darth Vader throw his lightsaber and chop down the platform that Luke was standing on. For the time, for the 1980s, this was dope. And once again, we'd have, the choreography is the only thing holding this back, in my opinion, from being number 1, just because in hindsight, choreography wasn't, the greatest thing ever, but it was still a pretty damn dope fight. It's epic.
Yes.
When in the terms of Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this fight had the highest of stakes. I mean, yeah. If Luke didn't succeed, then the rebels would have been totally and utterly defeated. And just the emotional hills and valleys that this fight gives you from all the characters involved, particularly Luke and Darth Vader. It's a great way for them to have culminated those 3 movies. To see, like you said, Luke maybe embrace the dark side. Is he or won't he? To see Vader finally find that redemption at the end. It speaks volumes. I mean, it's almost like small little touches that, again, really echo and resonate, and we still talk about to this day the implications of what those characters did, at the very end during that fight, and the decisions that they ultimately decided to make, and really set the tone for that movie and everything else that's come afterwards. And like Hazy said, it's not the most technically proficient fight ever, but sometimes what makes a fight good is how much emotional baggage or backing it has. Sure. And that was the heavyweight fight that everyone wanted to see. We weren't around back then, but we could imagine that people were losing their minds. They were thinking, this is it. This is the hero versus the villain, and it's his father for the fate of everything.
Yeah, I mean, even some cool imagery in there where, there's a point where Luke chops off Darth Vader's mechanical hand, and he stops before, laying the killing blow on his father, and he looks at his own mechanical hand. And it brings up 2 ideas to me immediately, which is, one is that, you're not so different from your father if you strike him down. You know what I mean? His mechanical hand, you've got one too. Maybe you're not, all that different. And the second thing is, maybe you're slowly becoming him and you don't even know it. So your next step, could change that. And also, this, he has mechanical hand, you have mechanical hand, like father, like son. That idea comes into mind. And, it's just an epic fight. It being at 3, I don't want to downplay how great it is. But that leads us to our next entry. Number 2, DeepBoyce. What do we got?
Number 2 is, it's a little, we're going to have to, it's a little odd. We're going to explain this real quick because it's a whole sequence and we have 4 combatants in this one. And it's from Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. It is Obi Wan and Anakin versus Dooku, followed by Yoda versus Dooku. Again, choreography absolutely on point, and again, and you have an awesome battle between Dooku and the tag team of Obi Wan and Anakin, and they do a pretty good job. But Dooku shows his, he flexes his muscle, he flexes his weight, his proficiency, and is able to take out two amazing Jedi. I mean, a young raw talent in Anakin, and I mean Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the greatest Jedis of all time, as well, with somewhat relative ease. Using a little bit of trickery here and there with some Force abilities, but then out of nowhere, at least seemingly to me, when I was watching the movie, I did not expect this to happen at all. One of the most popular Star Wars characters, the little green man himself, 900 years, or maybe 800 and something years old at that point.
I think, I mean, who knows? A man is ancient at that point. Little guy is ancient.
Yoda himself comes in and he says, "That ass I must whoop." Cracks his back real quick so he can get his posture on point, and takes out his little butter knife of a lightsaber and goes to town with Count Dooku, and it was amazing. And it was, one of the most unique lightsaber fighting styles I think we've seen yet, where Yoda's just doing flips and capoeira and all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, how Dooku was able to make it out of that, I don't know. He ran away, obviously, because he knew Yoda was going to slice him up.
I mean, he basically used, the injured Anakin and Obi-Wan as sort of leverage to get out of the fight. And Yoda's not going to leave, these two young, promising Jedi, to die. So he ultimately, Dooku was going to basically like drop a heavy, piece of equipment on him or something like that, something in the environment, and Yoda stopped it. That's the only reason why he got it out of that fight, because I think Yoda honestly would have whooped that candy ass. I mean, the only thing I think of in that fight was in Empire Strikes Back, where Yoda looks at Luke and he goes, "Judge me by my size, do you?" And I was like, "Dang, I don't judge you by your size anymore, Yoda. You earned that." Your man's flipping around, Dooku's shook, doing a Harlem Shake trying to stop him. And it was awesome, man. Awesome fight. And, we never got to understand why Yoda was such a great Jedi Master. And I think that was the moment where we're like, okay, point taken. Like, we understand. You know what I mean? And I think that the choreography of the fight, seeing Anakin with two blades, him ultimately getting his arm chopped off, it was just a very great sequence. Also, it sort of established Count Dooku as a player. And, unfortunately, he didn't get his shine in the next movie. But, in the Clone Wars, he was made to be a formidable force in the Clone Wars animated series. And it was great, man. But DeepBoyce, on to numero uno. You guessed it, everybody. Because if you're here at this point, you know what number one is. It is Anakin Skywalker versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The epic fight on Mustafar, the volcano planet. I mean, choreography, check. The effect of the overall plot, okay, check. The stakes, check. The legacy of the people involved, this shapes their future, okay. Obi-Wan, although he defeats Anakin, he failed because he didn't kill him. Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Obi-Wan goes into exile to watch over his son, Darth Vader's son, Luke Skywalker. This fight was beyond epic. Two heavy hitters of the Jedi Order going 1-on-1, okay? Two people who, although they may have had a father-son relationship earlier on in the prequel era, they at this point consider themselves to be brothers. And Anakin has fallen by the wayside, and Obi-Wan has a definitive feeling that he failed him. He even says it. The only thing that was whack about his fight is Anakin Skywalker saying, "From my point, the Jedi are evil." I was like, no, Anakin Skywalker, that makes no damn sense. But I like you right now because you're whooping some ass on a lava planet. I can't hate on that. DeepBoyce, awesome fight. Number one, completely deserves it. Just them changing different set pieces, flipping around. One person getting the higher ground, the other person getting his leg chopped off and getting a smidge of lava on his body. Just a smidge. Awesome.
Just a smidge, but
just a smidge. I mean, enough to burn him up. Turn him into a piece of barbecue spare rib tips. You know what I'm saying? Just enough.
Just enough to turn him into some St. Louis style ribs. But no, I mean, I couldn't have said it better than you just put it. This is one of the most visually pleasing fights in all of Star Wars. It's number one on our list. It's got super high stakes. It's between master and apprentice. And two of the most popular Star Wars characters in existence. And it really, it does a decent job of kind of closing out the movie everyone has a problem with the prequels, but this is definitely one of the shining lights or shining moments that we get in these original 3 movies.
Sure.
And like Casey said, yeah, there's a little bit of corniness here and there, but listen, when Anakin brought it, he brought it. He was going in. And I also really enjoyed the approach to the fight. There was what makes a good fight, besides the emotional backing that it has, is also kind of the story beats that it takes. Where one person is on the ropes and they come back, and then the other person tries some underhanded tactics, and then you really see kind of the emotional, the state that Anakin is in, and the way that he's fighting, the way he's coming at Obi-Wan is just pure rage and power and force, while Obi-Wan is being defensive for the entirety of the fight, because this is his, this is like his brother. This is his family to him. He doesn't want him to fall to the dark side like this. He still feels that there may be some redemption, some way to kind of turn back, and it really shows in the way that he's fighting him throughout this whole fight. Yeah.
I mean, even the point where he says, I have the high ground. It's not just him telling him, hey, I'm better than you. It's also, hey, you've lost this fight. Surrender. But, don't try it, because I don't want to do this. I'll only do this if you make me do this. And he, obviously we know Anakin tries to jump over him and Obi-Wan slices half his body off. But another great thing about this fight that, in terms of the story, like you said, is that you can tell at almost every turn in that fight, when Obi-Wan does something, Anakin Skywalker is trying to match it. It's not a situation where Anakin does something, Obi-Wan's like, oh, I got to do that too. It's the jealousy you see in Anakin Skywalker trying to prove himself. If Obi-Wan jumps to the platform, he's got to jump too. If Obi-Wan has the high ground, he's got to have the high ground too. He's got to show he's got higher ground. And throughout the whole fight, you see Anakin trying to prove himself to not just match Obi-Wan, but to be better than him. So he's got to do everything he does. Even when you see him watching some of the moves that Obi-Wan's making, he's got to do the same move too. And I think that the story that's told in that fight, the soundtrack, it just set the stakes for, the fight and the desperation from both of these characters. One, not wanting to take out his apprentice, and the other desperately, trying to find some right, some justification in the path he's taken. Yeah. Holding on to, ideas of saving his wife, although, he's at the point where his rage has controlled him to the point where he doesn't even know that he's hurting his wife by doing what he's done, to the point where he's thinking about his empire and saving his empire through working with Palpatine. Even the idea that he has to prove himself to his former master, the weight and stakes in this fight are fantastic. But that being said, everybody, what did you think about our top 10 list of Star Wars lightsaber fights? Let us know if there are entries on this list you don't agree with. Let us know if there are entries you think should be on the list that aren't. Let us know if you think any of these entries should be placed in different locations. But by all means, support the Spectacular Spoiler League by hitting that subscribe button and clicking that little bell icon right next to that button so you can be up to date with the latest and greatest coming from the Spectacular Spoiler League. Drop us a like, because the Force wills it, and we will the Spectacular Spoiler League to grow. And we need you to do that. Me and DeepBoyce, we're heading on out of here to watch every single Star Wars movie ever, because those movies are fantastic, and we can't wait till The Last Jedi and future Star Wars movies. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace.